I arrived at the country club for my baby shower to find the event room completely empty and the staff confused about why I was there. "Ma'am, your mother-in-law called yesterday to cancel this event," the manager explained. When I showed them my invitation and deposit receipt, they realized Margaret had been impersonating me to destroy my celebration while I was 8 months pregnant. Before I dive into this story of family sabotage during the most vulnerable time of my life and the justice that followed, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever had in-laws who crossed unforgivable lines, and subscribe to True Revenge for more stories of family justice served cold. My name is Jennifer, I'm 29 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought family meant supporting each other through life's biggest moments. This story begins with planning the celebration of my first pregnancy and ends with exposing a mother-in-law's calculated cruelty that shocked even her own son. My husband David and I had been trying to conceive for 2 years when I finally got pregnant. We were overjoyed, and the pregnancy had been going smoothly. 32 weeks, we were excited to celebrate with family and friends at the baby shower I'd been planning for months. David's mother, Margaret, had always been complicated. She was the type of woman who smiled sweetly while making cutting comments, who offered help while criticizing everything you did, who claimed to want the best for her family while actually wanting complete control over their lives. From the moment David and I started dating 5 years ago, Margaret made it clear that no woman would ever be good enough for her precious son. She'd make comments about my career, my appearance, my family background, always framed as concern rather than criticism. "I just worry that Jennifer might not understand how demanding David's career can be," she'd tell relatives. "Some women aren't cut out for supporting ambitious men." When David proposed, Margaret's reaction was telling. Instead of congratulations, her first question was, "Are you sure you're ready for marriage? You're still so young, and there are so many opportunities ahead of you." She spent our entire engagement trying to insert herself into every wedding decision, from the venue to the guest list to my dress. When we politely declined her suggestions, she'd pout and tell David that I was controlling and didn't respect family input. The wedding went smoothly despite Margaret's attempts to micromanage everything, but I noticed she spent the reception telling anyone who would listen about how differently she would have planned things. When I got pregnant, I hoped Margaret's desire to be a grandmother might improve our relationship. Initially, it seemed like it might. She was excited about the baby and offered to help with preparations. "I want to be the best grandmother possible," she told me during one of our early pregnancy visits. "I have so much experience with babies, and I'd love to share that with you." I was touched by her apparent enthusiasm and cautiously optimistic that we might finally bond over our shared excitement about the baby. But as the pregnancy progressed, Margaret's help became increasingly controlling and intrusive. She had opinions about everything: my prenatal care, my diet, my exercise routine, my work schedule, even my maternity clothes. "Are you sure you should be working so late?" she'd ask when David mentioned I had evening meetings. "The baby needs you to prioritize rest over career ambitions." "I don't think those prenatal vitamins are the best brand," she'd say when she saw my supplements. I researched extensively when I was pregnant with David, and I found much better options. Every piece of advice came with the implication that I was making poor choices and needed her guidance to be a good mother. The real problem started when I began planning my baby shower. I'd envisioned a lovely afternoon celebration with close family and friends at a beautiful venue. Through researching several options, I booked the event room at Willowbrook Country Club, a charming space with large windows overlooking gardens. I was excited about the shower and spent weeks planning every detail. I designed custom invitations, coordinated with a caterer for a beautiful spread of food, and arranged for decorations in soft pastels that matched the nursery theme David and I had chosen. When I told Margaret about the plans, her response was immediate and intense. "Willowbrook Country Club?" she said, her voice sharp with disapproval. "Jennifer, that's far too expensive and elaborate for a baby shower. People will think you're being excessive." "Margaret, it's actually quite reasonable, and David and I are comfortable with the cost. We want to celebrate this special time with our family and friends." "But what about the guest list?" "You're inviting far too many people." Baby showers should be intimate gatherings with just close family. I'd invited about 50 people, relatives, close friends, and colleagues. It wasn't an enormous crowd, and everyone on the list was someone important to me or David. I've thought carefully about the guest list, Margaret. These are all people who've been supportive throughout our relationship and pregnancy. Margaret's expression hardened. Jennifer, I think you're making some poor decisions about this shower. As David's mother and the baby's grandmother, I should have more input into how this celebration is planned. I appreciate your interest, Margaret, but David and I are comfortable with our plans. Well, I think you should reconsider. The venue is too expensive, the guest list is too large, and honestly, some of your friends aren't the type of people I want influencing my grandchild's celebration. That last comment was particularly hurtful. Margaret was essentially saying that my friends weren't good enough to celebrate my baby. Margaret, these are my closest friends. They're wonderful people who care about me and David. If you say so, she replied with a dismissive shrug. But I think you'll regret making this shower so ostentatious. People will judge you for being showy instead of focusing on what really matters. Over the following weeks, Margaret continued to criticize every aspect of my shower plans. She disapproved of the menu, the decorations, the timing, even the games I'd planned to play. She also began making strange requests and asking detailed questions about the logistics. "What time exactly does the shower start?" she asked during one visit. "2 p.m., just like it says on the invitation. And what's the full address of the country club? I want to make sure I can give directions to relatives who might need them." I provided the information, thinking she was just being helpful. "What about the caterer? Which company are you using? I might want to recommend them to friends for future events." Again, I shared the details, appreciating what seemed like a genuine interest in supporting my plans. "And remind me of the manager's name at the country club?" "I met her briefly when we toured the venue, but I can't remember." I told her the event coordinator's name was Lisa, and Margaret nodded as if filing away the information. Looking back, I should have been suspicious of these detailed questions. Margaret had never shown interest in the specifics of events she wasn't planning herself. But I was busy with work, pregnancy, and final preparations, so I didn't think too much about her sudden curiosity. 3 days before the shower, Margaret called with what seemed like a reasonable request. "Jennifer, I was wondering if you could add my friend Carol to the guest list. She's been asking about the shower, and I'd love to have her there." "Margaret, I've already given final numbers to the caterer and the venue. Adding another person at this point would be complicated." "Oh, come on, Jennifer. One more person can't possibly matter. Carol has been like a sister to me for 30 years. It would mean the world to me to have her there. I understand she's important to you, but we planned the guest list carefully to fit the space and catering order. Maybe Carol could join us for a smaller celebration after the baby is born." Margaret's tone turned cold. "I see. So my oldest friend isn't welcome at my grandchild's shower because you're too rigid to accommodate one additional person." "Margaret, it's not about being rigid. It's about practical limitations and the fact that we've already finalized all the arrangements." "Fine, Jennifer. I suppose your plans are more important than family relationships." She hung up without saying goodbye, and I spent the rest of the day feeling guilty about disappointing her. David encouraged me to stick to our original plans, pointing out that adding guests at the last minute really would create complications. "Mom will get over it," he assured me. "She's just excited about the baby and wants to be involved." The day before the shower, I was busy with final preparations, picking up decorations, confirming details with the caterer, and getting everything ready for what I hoped would be a perfect celebration. That evening, I received a call from Lisa, the event coordinator at Willowbrook Country Club. "Hi, Jennifer. I'm calling to confirm the setup details for tomorrow's baby shower. What time would you like us to begin decorating the room?" "We discussed this already, Lisa. The decorations should be set up by 1:30 p.m. so everything is ready when guests start arriving at 2. "I'm sorry, but I'm looking at my notes and I have it that you canceled the event yesterday." Let me double check. Yes, we received a cancellation call yesterday afternoon. My heart stopped. Lisa, I absolutely did not cancel my baby shower. There must be some mistake. That's very strange. Let me pull up the details. The cancellation call came from someone who identified herself as Jennifer Williams, and she provided all the correct information about the event: date, time, guest count, everything. Jennifer Williams was my maiden name. I'd been Jennifer Williams before marrying David and becoming Jennifer Martinez. Very few people knew my maiden name, and even fewer would think to use it when calling about an event clearly related to my married life. Lisa, someone else called and impersonated me to cancel my baby shower. I never made any cancellation call. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Let me see what we can do. Unfortunately, when we received the cancellation, we released the room to another client who needed space for tomorrow. The catering order was also canceled. I felt like I was going to be sick. My baby shower was supposed to happen in less than 24 hours, and someone had deliberately sabotaged it by impersonating me. Lisa, is there any way to track who made that call? This is clearly malicious interference with my event. Let me check our call logs. We have caller ID records for all incoming calls. Here it is. The cancellation call came from area code 847, number 5550198. I recognized that number immediately. It was Margaret's cell phone. My mother-in-law had called the venue, impersonated me using my maiden name, and canceled my baby shower because I hadn't agreed to add her friend to the guest list. Lisa, I know who made that call. It was my mother-in-law. She was angry about a guest list issue and decided to sabotage my entire event. That's horrible. I'm so sorry this happened. Let me see what we can do to fix this situation. Lisa worked frantically to find solutions, but the damage was extensive. The room had been rebooked, the catering order had been canceled, and the ingredients reassigned to other events, and it was too late to recreate the original arrangements. We might be able to set you up in our smaller conference room, Lisa offered. And we could arrange for basic refreshments, but it wouldn't be the same as what you originally planned. I appreciated her efforts, but I was devastated. I'd spent months planning this celebration, and Margaret had destroyed it with one malicious phone call. That night, I called David and told him what had happened. He was shocked and initially didn't want to believe his mother could do something so cruel. Are you sure it was Mom who called? Maybe someone else got access to her phone? David, she used my maiden name. How many people even know that, let alone would think to use it when calling about our baby shower? But why would she cancel your shower? She was excited about being a grandmother. Because I wouldn't add her friend Carol to the guest list. She was angry that I didn't accommodate her request, so she decided to punish me by destroying the entire event. David was quiet for a long time, processing the implications of his mother's actions. What do you want to do? He finally asked. First, I want to document everything. Then I want to confront your mother with the evidence and make sure she faces consequences for what she's done. The next morning, I went to Willowbrook Country Club to collect copies of all the documentation related to the cancellation. Lisa provided me with a copy of the original contract and deposit receipt, records showing the cancellation call with timestamp and phone number, a written statement describing the circumstances of the cancellation, and copies of emails confirming that the catering and room had been reassigned. I also contacted the caterer and received similar documentation showing that they'd received a cancellation call from the same phone number on the same day. Meanwhile, our guests began arriving at the country club for the 2 p.m. shower, only to find an empty room and confused staff. Several people called me to ask what was happening, and I had to explain that the event had been maliciously canceled by Margaret. The humiliation was overwhelming. These were people who had taken time out of their busy weekends to celebrate my pregnancy, and instead they were witnessing the aftermath of family sabotage. Some guests were angry on my behalf. Others were simply confused. A few seemed to think there had been some kind of miscommunication rather than deliberate malice. My sister helped me contact everyone to explain the situation and invite them to an impromptu gathering at my house instead. About half the guests came over for an informal celebration, but the damage to what should have been a special day was irreversible. That afternoon, while we were having our makeshift shower at home, Margaret called David. "I heard there was some confusion about Jennifer's baby shower today," she said innocently. "I hope everything worked out okay." David, armed with the evidence I'd gathered, confronted her directly. "Mom, we know you called the country club and canceled Jennifer's shower. We have phone records proving it was you." The silence stretched long enough that David thought the call had dropped. "Mom, are you there?" I don't know what you're talking about, David. Why would I cancel Jennifer's shower? Because she wouldn't add your friend Carol to the guest list, and you decided to punish her for not accommodating your request. That's ridiculous. I would never do something like that. Mom, the venue has caller ID records showing your phone number. You called them, identified yourself as Jennifer Williams, and canceled the entire event. Another long pause. Well, maybe I made a mistake. I was trying to help with the planning, and I might have misunderstood something Jennifer asked me to do. Mom, there's no misunderstanding about this. You deliberately sabotaged Jennifer's baby shower because you were angry about not getting your way. David, you're being very unfair to me. I was only trying to help, and if there was a miscommunication, it wasn't intentional. Calling the venue and canceling an event by impersonating the host isn't a miscommunication, Mom. It's deliberate sabotage. Margaret's story kept changing as David pressed her for explanations. First, she denied making any calls. Then she claimed it was a misunderstanding. Finally, she admitted to calling the venue but insisted she'd been helping by making changes Jennifer had supposedly requested. Jennifer was feeling overwhelmed by all the planning, Margaret claimed. She mentioned that maybe the shower was too much stress, and I was just trying to help by handling the situation. Mom, Jennifer never said anything about being overwhelmed or wanting to cancel her shower. She was excited about the celebration and had been planning it for months. Well, maybe you don't know your wife as well as you think you do, David. Pregnant women can be very emotional and change their minds frequently. That comment was the final straw for David. His mother was not only lying about her sabotage, but was now suggesting that I was emotionally unstable due to pregnancy. Mom, I'm done listening to your excuses. What you did was cruel and unforgivable. You destroyed one of the most important celebrations of Jennifer's pregnancy because you didn't get your way about the guest list. David, I think you're overreacting. It was just a party. Jennifer can have another one after the baby is born. It wasn't just a party, Mom. It was a celebration that Jennifer had been planning for months, and you destroyed it out of spite. And the fact that you're still lying about it and making excuses makes it even worse. David hung up on his mother and came home to find me surrounded by friends who had rallied to salvage what they could of the day. While I appreciated their support, I was still devastated by Margaret's betrayal. What do you want to do about this? David asked after the last guests had left. I want her to face real consequences for what she did. This wasn't just a disagreement or a miscommunication. This was calculated sabotage of one of the most important days of my pregnancy. What kind of consequences? First, she needs to apologize publicly to everyone who was affected by her actions. Second, she needs to compensate us for the financial losses, the deposits we lost, the catering costs, everything. Third, I want a formal agreement that she won't interfere with any future family events or decisions. And if she refuses, then we document everything and pursue legal action for intentional interference with contractual relationships and emotional distress. David supported my demands completely. He'd finally seen his mother's true character and was appalled by her willingness to sabotage such an important family celebration. We drafted a formal letter to Margaret outlining what she'd done and what we expected in terms of accountability. We wanted a written apology acknowledging her actions and the harm they caused, reimbursement of all financial losses resulting from the cancellation, which totaled $2,800, a signed agreement not to interfere with future family events or decisions, and attendance at family counseling to address her controlling behavior. Margaret's response was predictably defensive and manipulative. She denied any intentional wrongdoing, claimed she'd been misunderstood, and suggested that I was being vindictive and hormonal due to pregnancy. She refused to apologize, refused to provide financial compensation, and accused David of being controlled by his unstable wife. That response sealed her fate. David and I consulted with an attorney who specialized in family law and intentional torts. After reviewing the documentation, she confirmed that we had strong grounds for legal action. Intentional interference with contractual relationships is a recognized tort, attorney Sarah Kim explained. When someone deliberately disrupts contracts or business relationships through deception or fraud, they can be held financially liable for resulting damages. What about the emotional distress aspect? The fact that this happened during your pregnancy, targeted such an important personal celebration, and involved deliberate deception certainly supports a claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress. We filed a lawsuit against Margaret seeking compensation for actual financial losses of $2,800, additional damages for emotional distress of $10,000, legal fees and court costs, and a court-ordered injunction preventing future interference with family events. The lawsuit became public record, and word spread quickly through our extended family and social circle. Most people were shocked to learn the extent of Margaret's deception and the calculated nature of her sabotage. Margaret's own sister called to express her disgust with the behavior. "I'm embarrassed to be related to someone who would do something so cruel to a pregnant woman," she told David. Several of Margaret's friends distanced themselves after learning about the lawsuit and the evidence of her deliberate sabotage. Margaret hired an attorney and initially tried to claim that the cancellation had been a misunderstanding rather than intentional interference. That defense crumbled quickly when faced with phone records proving she'd made the cancellation call, her use of my maiden name showing deliberate impersonation, testimony from venue staff about the specific details she'd provided, and evidence that she'd asked for detailed information about the event in the weeks leading up to the cancellation. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Margaret's attorney advised her to settle rather than go to trial and face potential additional damages. The final settlement required Margaret to pay $15,000 in total damages and legal fees, issue a formal written apology acknowledging her actions, agree to a court-enforced restraining order preventing interference with our family decisions for 2 years, and attend mandatory family counseling sessions. But the financial and legal consequences were nothing compared to the damage to Margaret's relationships with her own family. David was so disgusted by his mother's actions and her continued refusal to take responsibility that he cut off contact with her for over a year. He realized that her controlling behavior had been escalating for years, and this sabotage was just the most extreme example of her inability to respect boundaries. Extended family members who learned about the situation were appalled. Margaret's reputation in her social circle was severely damaged when people realized she was capable of such calculated cruelty toward her pregnant daughter-in-law. Most importantly, Margaret lost the opportunity to be involved in her first grandchild's early life. When our daughter Emma was born 3 months later, Margaret was not welcome at the hospital, was not invited to visit during our recovery period, and missed all the precious early moments she'd claimed to be so excited about. The irony was perfect. Margaret's attempt to control my baby shower by destroying it resulted in her losing control over everything related to her grandchild's life. Our daughter is now 8 months old, and Margaret has only seen her a handful of times under carefully supervised conditions. The relationship may eventually be rebuilt, but it will never be the same. David has become much more protective of our family's boundaries and much more willing to stand up to his mother's controlling behavior. The experience opened his eyes to patterns of manipulation that he'd normalized growing up but could now see clearly. My relationship with David has actually grown stronger through this ordeal. Seeing him choose to support me against his mother's sabotage and lies proved that he was truly committed to our marriage and family. The baby shower sabotage taught me valuable lessons about documenting everything when dealing with manipulative family members, setting clear boundaries with people who can't respect your decisions, and the importance of holding people accountable for their actions, regardless of family relationships. Margaret's attempt to punish me for not accommodating her demands backfired spectacularly. Instead of getting her way, she lost her relationship with her son, her reputation in the family, and her opportunity to be involved in her grandchild's life. Sometimes the people who claim to love us the most are the ones willing to hurt us the deepest when they don't get their way. But sometimes standing up to that behavior, even when it's family, is the only way to protect what really matters. If you enjoyed this story of family sabotage and consequences served, please give this video a like and subscribe to True Revenge for more stories of justice. Share your own experiences with controlling in-laws in the comments below. Have you ever had family members sabotage important events? Remember, document everything when dealing with family members who cross boundaries, especially during vulnerable times like pregnancy. Sometimes legal action is the only way to make people face the consequences of their destructive behavior. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, some boundaries are worth defending even against family members who refuse to respect them.